Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Denise White, and I am CML Colorado Municipal League's Engagement and Communications Manager. Today, we are joined by Bev Stables, one of our legislative policy advocates here at CML, Kristen Dunn, the Deputy Director of Colorado Counties, Inc., who is helping us co-present this material for you today. Natasha Butler with CDOT and some of her other teammates from CDOT who are going to talk to us about the CDOT's off-system bridge repair program. Before we get going, I'm just going to take care of a little bit of housekeeping, including making sure everybody knows how to interact with our technology today. We've been doing this for a while, but we are on Zoom today. If you scroll down to the bottom of your screen, you should see a control panel. We are going to ask everybody to stay kind of on mute and keep your cameras off for the bulk of the presentation, just so we can focus on Natasha and the material she's presenting on off-system bridge repair. But we are asking you to participate in real time with any questions you may have. So pop those into the chat, or you can look at that reactions feature on that lower bar and raise your hand. And then Bev and I will be watching for that to make sure that those questions get brought up to Natasha to be able to answer those in real time. We'll also save some time at the end of today's session for some general Q&A. And we'll invite you on screen and with your mics turned off at that point in time or turned on at that point in time. Just a couple last additional reminders. We are recording today's session. At the end of the week, we'll have that link shared through CCI as well as on CML's website so that you can go back and watch this recording or share it with a colleague who wasn't able to attend today. We'll also have the presentation slides and Natasha's contact information so you can follow up with her if you have additional questions or need more information. I think Bev is also willing to play kind of a connector if needed. And then finally, for any of our elected officials attending today, you will receive 1 university credit for the training program for attending today. So y'all didn't come here to listen to me today. And without further ado, let's learn more about off-system bridge repair with CDOT. And Natasha, take it away.
Great, thank you. So my name is Natasha Butler. I'm CDOT's Bridge Asset Management Engineer, and Michael Collins, my boss, is the State Bridge Engineer, and Naz Akert on my team. We kind of work as a team to help support the Special Highway Committee with the off-system bridge program. So just to kind of give an outline of my presentation, I'm going to go through a program overview and the history, objective, where the funding comes from, responsibilities for the program, as well as the 2024 update, where we're at with available funding. And then I'm going to get into the application part. So what constitutes an eligible structure? What's the typical schedule look like? What are we looking for in applications? How are those applications prioritized? And then some application tools. So I'm just going to jump into it here. I'll do a pause midway through to allow for any questions. So the program got started as part of the Federal Highway Bridge Replacement and Rehabilitation Program. Now, this was eliminated as a part of MAP 21, but the Transportation Commission decided to continue the program and continue funding the program. Now, the passage of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the IIJA, added additional funding to the program for years 2022 through 2026. So the objective of the program is not just bridge rehab and replacements, which I think a lot of folks are more familiar with, but there's also an objective to perform the inspection for major structures and perform inspection for locally owned tunnels. Both of these structure classes were required to inspect and report on per FHWA. And the applicability for the program is anything that's owned by Colorado counties and municipalities and carry public roadways. So the program funding, it's a line in the annual CDOT budget. It's partially funded through state funds, but the majority of the funding is federal. So that's where CDOT provides stewardship and oversight of those federal funds to ensure that all of the regulations are being followed for projects as those funds are being used. And I'll get into that a little bit more as we go along and get into responsibilities. So we have 5 main groups that have responsibilities for this program. We have our Special Highway Committee, local agencies, CDOT local agency coordinators, CDOT staff bridge, that's the team that I'm on, and then CDOT Office of Financial Management and Budget. So the Special Highway Committee, there really are decision makers for the program, right? This is a group of representatives from CCI and CML that come and sit together and make decisions on which projects are going to be awarded. They review all of the applications, all of the supplemental applications, and decide which will be approved or denied. They put out the annual call for applications, and they also review the annual local communication project list. So we have a project list and tracking so that we're continually tracking how projects are doing. And we go through an annual review and reconciliation process to make sure that we're staying up to date on where projects are at or if they're falling behind and we need to reach out and communicate further on those. So local agency responsibilities, right? Local agencies play a huge role in this program. You submit applications for funding on eligible projects, coordinate project activities with the responsible CDOT local agency coordinator, right? So this is, from everything to when you're going through your application, you're working with them to make sure that your estimates are reasonable, that the project is feasible, and then if you're given award, then you're working with that local agency coordinator to make sure that the federal regulations are being followed, filling out paperwork, intergovernmental agreements, and yeah, really coordinating with them. Local agencies also provide the local match or overmatch funds for the project. So there is a 20% local agency match requirements for these awards. And you perform all the project work in accordance with state and federal laws, rules, and regulations. I've included a link to our CDOT local agency manual webpage here, just as a resource. I think we're sending these slides out afterward, so folks can have that at their fingertips. So CDOT local agency coordinator responsibilities. These are the folks that CDOT has in each region, so kind of each corner of the state, and then we have another region 1 here in the Denver metro area. The local agency coordinators support local agencies as they prepare to submit applications, and they help kind of manage the projects from award to closure, right? So they're the ones, like I said, they're helping with the intergovernmental agreements, project setup, budget actions, and just verifying that all of the federal regulations are being followed since we're using federal money for the projects. They also coordinate the technical details with Staff Bridge. So Staff Bridge, actually, I'll get into our responsibilities here. Our design units provide technical support. So we are centralized here in Denver, and our designers kind of sit here together and are the brains of designing our bridges. So in addition to that, CDOT Staff Bridge, we coordinate with the Office of Financial Management and Budget, and we help track the budgets and projects that are being awarded through this program. We're the liaison to the Special Highway Committee, so we provide support. We provide what the available budget is for award each year, the eligible structure listing each year from our inspection data, and then we also compile that annual local communication project list for reconciliation. The Office of Financial Management and Budget responsibilities, really they're the folks overseeing our budget, right? So they're tracking the budgets, they're making sure that we're getting money into our pools, we're separating money out for inspection. They're the ones that transfer the money between the statewide pool and the regional pools so it can be reimbursed to local agencies as they're going through their project. They're identifying any local overmatch when that occurs, and they're helping us maintain that tracking summary of projects and budgets. So for a program update, I'm going to start with just some averages kind of prior to that IIJA funding. So from 2019 to 2023, the Special Highway Committee awarded on average 4 replacement projects a year at about $960,000 per replacement project, 4 rehab projects per year at $685,000 per rehabilitation project. Now in 2023, we really saw the effects of that additional IIJA funding kick in. So there were 7 replacement projects awarded for totaling 8.23 million, 8 rehab projects totaling 9.12 million, and 4 supplemental awards for 3 million. Now in 2024, there's 15.3 million available for award. This includes around 2.5 million in roll forwards from 2023. Now, the way that this works is funding is allocated to counties and municipalities based on the percentage of poor bridges owned by counties versus municipalities. So you can see here 8.2 million is available to award for counties and 7.02 million is available to award for municipalities this year. So before I get into the application overview, do we have any questions? I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
Nope, I'm not seeing any questions yet, but do invite people to put them in the chat or again, raise your hand. We would love to catch these in real time, but there will be time at the end too. We know it can be a lot to absorb.
Yeah, great, thank you. All right, so I will roll forward. I think this is what most folks typically have questions on anyhow. What is eligible for the program, right? Which of my structures can I apply for this funding? So the structure has to be a major structure. I'll get into this in a little more detail here in a minute. Owned by a Colorado county or municipality, located on a public road, and the structure has to be in poor or fair condition. Now, what is a major structure? A major structure is a bridge or a culvert with combined clear spans along the roadway center line greater than 20 feet. And if you like to read federal regulations, we've got that up there, but what I prefer to look at are pictures, right? So these structures, you can see the clear span along the direction of roadway is greater than 20 feet. And for bridges, that's a little easier to see, but you can see that the culverts, if you have a series of pipes spaced next to one another and they're less than or equal to half of the diameter next to one another, and that total distance is greater than 20 foot, that's considered a major structure. It should be included in the National Bridge Inventory. We have a program at CDOT that oversees those inspections every 2 years. We have consultants that go out and inspect those structures. We report that data to FHWA, and that those structures, depending on their condition, are eligible for this funding. The other thing is that the structures have to carry public vehicular traffic. So no pedestrian structures, no private structures, public vehicular traffic. Now let's get into condition. So as I said before, to be eligible for the program, a structure has to be in poor or fair condition. And the way that we determine this varies on whether or not a structure is a bridge or a culvert. I'm going to start with bridge. It's a little more complicated. We have 3 components to a bridge that receive a score from 0 to 9. We have the deck, the superstructure, so that's your girders. They sit kind of on top of the piers. They're holding up the deck, and then you have your substructures, your piers or your abutments. That's the substructure of the bridge, and each of those items get a score from 0 to 9. Now, if any one of those items receive a score of 4 or less, it's considered a poor structure. So if you have a deck that scores a 3, but your superstructure and your substructure both score a 5, they're in fair condition, but your deck is in poor condition, we consider the entire structure to be in poor condition. Culverts are a little simpler. They only receive 1 score from 0 to 9. If they receive a score of 4 or less, it's considered poor condition. And so typically, we expect that structures that are in poor condition probably need, major rehabilitation or replacement to bring them back up to good condition. Now, just because a structure is in poor condition doesn't necessarily mean that it's a safety concern, but it's more indicative that the structure has reached a point of deterioration where there's going to be a larger investment needed to bring the structure back up to good health. Now, our other category of structures that are eligible for the program are fair structures. So again, we look at it the same way, but our scores here for fair condition are a 5 or a 6. So if a structure scores a 5 or a 6 for its lowest rating, it's considered to be a fair structure. Now, fair structures, we typically don't expect these structures to need replacement. Sometimes you'll go through a cost analysis and determine that, well, it makes more sense right now to replace the structure than rehab it because that's more fiscally responsible. And that's certainly a justification that can be made. But typically, what we're expecting to see on these fair structures are more of preventative maintenance or major rehabilitation type of work to get them back up into good condition. So, a typical schedule for the program, starting in the spring, each year we have to submit our bridge data to federal highways. My unit creates the off system eligibility list. So, we submit that national bridge inventory data, and then we run a report that tells us which structures are in poor or fair condition, and we send that as well as the annual local communication to reconcile all of the existing projects and let folks know which structures are eligible this year for funding. And in the summer, the call for applications typically comes late July, early August from the Special Highway Committee. Fall is when applications are typically due, right? So they're typically due at the end of October. Special Highway Committee meets usually around November to read through the applications and determine awards. And then during the winter, awards are announced and we can move forward with getting funds transferred and getting the IGA process started and all of the paperwork going. So the original application, like I said, it's typically due in October, and really what we're looking for is, a scope of work. Where are you at with the project? How ready is it? What's your cost estimate? How much are you requesting? And do you have a 20% match, right? So for the project scope narrative, are you doing a replacement or a major rehab? If it's a fair structure that you want to replace, why do you need to replace it rather than rehab it? Why is that more fiscally responsible? We're looking to see that you coordinated with the CDOT local agency coordinator. You've already made that contact and have started working through that process, and they've taken a look at it. They've placed their eyes on it and kind of given the thumbs up that, yeah, this is a good project, you're in a good spot with this, your cost estimates are reasonable, go forward with it. And then we also have an application worksheet that kind of helps summarize all of the information into one spot. So project schedule and readiness is another thing that, especially in recent years, we've been focusing on a lot. And I think I get into this in prioritization, but we're really looking for shovel ready projects. So the further you are along in your design, the more competitive the application is. A recent cost estimate. It's really important to have a recent cost estimate so that's when you're asking for funding, it's as close to what you're actually going to need as possible, right? We see a lot of times awards will get sent to a local agency and they'll go out to ad and bids come back way higher than they expected, and that can sometimes be because there wasn't a recent cost estimate performed prior to the request for funding. And then you need to provide at a minimum a 20% local match. Obviously there's a potential for overmatch that can help make an application more competitive, but the 20% is all that's required. So this is what I was getting into a little bit before. How are applications prioritized? Right. So some of the key considerations are, like I was mentioning, those shovel ready projects. And what this means is that the project design is complete and ready for construction. All of the clearances have been received. The CDOT local agency coordinator has been looped in, and it's kind of ready to go to add. That can be difficult to get to a shovel ready position prior to actually submitting an application. But the closer you are to shovel ready, the higher the application is prioritized. And the reason for this is what we've seen a lot of is folks will come in and they haven't done a lot of design yet, and they don't know exactly what the treatment solution is going to be for the structure, what they're going to replace the structure with, or exactly how much it's going to cost. So they come in and they ask for a planning estimate amount of funding. And then they get down the line, and design takes longer than they really expected. And so by the time they're ready to go out to add with their project, a lot of things have changed, a lot of years have gone by, and it ends up costing a lot more than they were initially expecting when they requested the funding. So they come back and they ask for supplemental funding. And during that time, they're holding those funds kind of hostage, if you will, while they're working through those design processes. So it prevents that funding from being flexible, or used by other folks who are ready to move forward with their projects. Other considerations: poor structures on the national highway system, structures that have more than one structure component in poor condition. So if the deck and the superstructure are both in poor condition, that's kind of a higher priority than if just the deck is in poor condition. And then other factors that are considered are age, scour evaluation, if the structure is posted for load, closed, or if it's functionally obsolete, right? If it's a narrow bridge. Excuse me, got a dry throat. Now, I will say with functional obsolescence, those are typically structures that are too narrow, or just don't accommodate the new amount of traffic over the structure. This program is not really intended for capacity improvement projects. It's really focused on structure improvements. But that being said, a structure that's in poor condition and functionally obsolete is a little bit higher on list of considerations. So I've mentioned supplements kind of all throughout the presentation. Budget supplements are for local agencies that they've received an original award, and then, like I said, they went out to add, and bids came in way higher than they expected. So they can come back to the Special Highway Committee and request supplemental funding. And so really what we're looking for here is a justification of why this additional funding is needed, right? What could not have been reasonably foreseen that requires a budget supplement. And then the cost estimate for the budget supplement, the budget supplement amount requested, and the 20% local match. So the total funding received from the Special Highway Committee has to be met with that 20% local match. The available application tools. So this application data worksheet is what I mentioned previously. It gets sent out with the call for applications. This is kind of just to help summarize the project information for the Special Highway Committee as they're evaluating applications, and trying to help make sure that all of the data needed to make a decision is present somewhere, right? So we're looking at, for the structure number, location, if you coordinated with your local agency coordinator, what is the project type? Is it a rehab or a replacement? Where are you at in design? Are you looking for design and construction funding, or just design, or just construction? How much are you requesting? What's your local match amount that you're proposing? And then a narrative description of the work. We also encourage write-ups and photos to help explain and address anything that this form doesn't cover, and that all gets reviewed and considered during the application review process. In addition to that, CDOT, our design folks have developed over the years a lot of standard plans that can really help a local agency, get a leg up on that design process, right? So we have M standards. These are pre-engineered standard plans that can be used to estimate and deliver cost-effective solutions. A few of these that I think really apply to the off-system bridge program: cast-in-place concrete box culverts, precast concrete box culvert wing walls, excavation and backfill for structures. A lot of local agency-owned structures are smaller. Obviously, there are large, complex structures out there, but if you've just got kind of a single or a two-span structure that you're replacing, it's often very cost effective to look into the concrete box culvert solution. Additionally, CDOT has a project cost estimator tool for concrete box culvert replacement projects. So that's the end of the material that I have prepared today. You'll see here that I also have listed Andy Potts and Jacob O'Brien as contacts. They work on our design side and can help kind of answer design questions. But yeah, with that, I think I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Natasha. Really appreciate that. We haven't seen questions come in from chat, but as we said, at this point in time, invite anybody in attendance. Like, you've got the expert on this program here. If you've got questions, if you've used this before and you want to talk about your experience, or if this is something new to you and you're still trying to figure out, look, I saw the information, but what are my first steps? Please let us know if you've got those questions. And I was thinking, Natasha, as I was watching, learning along with everyone, I think in the very beginning you talked that there are separate buckets for county projects and city projects. Is that right, of the funding available? So, oh, look, we got a question come in too. So I just want to confirm that I'm seeing, like, you've got this total dollars, but there are some that are specifically earmarked for city, municipality use, and some specifically for county use, correct?
Yeah, so when the Special Highway Committee meets, they kind of break out into two sessions, CCI and CML, and they kind of oversee their separate buckets of funding from the pool of applications.
Great, thanks. And then we had a question come in from Robin asking, is it possible to apply for supplemental funding if our bridge construction estimate is significantly greater than we originally applied for?
Yeah, so it's always possible to apply for supplemental funding, right? I think what I would encourage for folks that unless there was just something, unless COVID popped up in the middle of your project, right? Um, you need to come to the table with some some kind of additional thing to sweeten the pot, as it were. Maybe a little more overmatch than just the 20%, or a really good justification as to why the cost estimate came in so differently, to kind of help justify that supplemental funding. You can always apply, and it's up to the Special Highway Committee to sit down and read through that application and make the decision.
Great, thank you. I think what I'm hearing from you is, like, it's possible, just make sure you've got your information and those facts at your fingertips, right, to help make the case. Yeah, so got time for more questions if anybody else also has curiosity on this or clarification on anything you've heard today. We're hearing from Michelle with Basalt. Is pedestrian safety considered when scoring the condition of a bridge? For example, an older bridge with a 2.5 or 2.5 foot sidewalk.
Not directly, no. That's kind of what I was alluding to before, that this program has really stood up to address, structural condition, and not as much of the mobility and capacity side of things. And I know that that's not a happy answer, and it's not that we don't consider safety, and it's not that we don't care about safety with these projects, but it's just not something that's directly factored in, at least when we're doing our scoring on things. Obviously, if that is a consideration for the project and you're just widening it to meet current design standards, that's something absolutely to write in the application and kind of justify and explain where that's coming from.
Thank you. Greg is asking, where can we find the most recent eligibility list?
Yeah, I can make sure that it gets sent out today. I believe it also gets sent out with the call for applications, if I'm remembering correctly. I'll have to look back at that.
Great, and happy to include that if you provide that like as a link on our site as well as we send out the
Perfect.
recording on this one.
Great. Yeah.
I made a note. Also, do you all produce a list of examples of funded projects? Like, do you have some examples out there of this as a project we help fund and worked through the system, this program?
That is a good question. We have a list in our tracker, and it would absolutely be possible to uh, produce a report. What's what specific type of examples are you thinking? Like replacements versus rehabs, type of structures?
And I
I don't
invite,
Maybe even just as a suggestion, and let me know if this is sort of what you're thinking, but maybe just in the last couple years, which ones were awarded like across the spectrum? And I have that information too. I can share that with folks.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have, replacements versus rehabs and amounts. But if we start getting into like what structure types and things like that, um, we can absolutely get that. That wouldn't be a problem. I'm just curious what kind of reports I can be putting together to help folks out with.
yeah, and our questioner clarified, not necessarily examples, but descriptions of funded projects. So I think.
Okay. Yeah, that one. I don't. Bev, do you have descriptions?
I'll go back and comb through. I think maybe Natasha and I can chat sort of offline and we'll make sure we get back to you. I can follow up and we'll kind of see what types of examples would be most helpful.
Yeah, perfect.
Great. Then we also had a question on if a county was awarded last year, would that exclude the entity for upcoming application cycle for a different bridge project location?
No, so there aren't any exclusions. I do know that the Special Highway Committee, tries to kind of pay attention to that to make sure that the peanut butter is getting spreads as equally as possible, but that doesn't mean that you can't submit an application.
And then another question on if a municipality contracts and pays for design to get a shovel-ready status, are those design fees eligible for reimbursement through the grant or count against the match?
No, they do not. And I know that's something that's a question that often gets asked, especially of local agencies that don't have as much funding to be able to get design ready. So that's certainly something that comes into the consideration as applications are being reviewed.
Great. Again, that was the last question we've seen come in, but we're not going to rush anybody out. I'm pretty comfortable with awkward quiet for a moment while we wait for other questions to come in. If you are, Natasha.
Yeah.
So give people a chance to think through it. And I think kind of, I think we've got some things we know we're going to follow up with on whether that's the recent eligibility list or maybe some descriptions of funded projects or some examples with some folks. So even if we can't answer right now, we'll find what we can for you and get that to you. I am still not seeing any hands raised or new questions coming in. So I'm going to talk slowly and start to close out because we can always give people back a little more in their time, but that doesn't mean you're thinking fast, get a question put in. Just want to say thank you to you, Natasha, for sharing your information and joining us with CDOT, as well as some others from your team supporting you on that and helping share information. Also, just a big thank you to Kristen Dunn and CCI We know this is a webinar we kind of co-produce or co-present, and so thank you for helping loop in our counties and make sure that we're getting good information out to all of our partners. And then just a reminder to everybody, we will have this recording, the PowerPoint deck, as well as maybe some of these other links and materials we're seeing you need for, we will add to our website. And everybody who's registered, we will send an email out to you to let you know when those are up. That will also be shared with CCI. So if you cannot access on CML's website, we're going to make sure you still can get that through CCI as well. Let's see. Oh, and we did have one more question come in, so we'll go with that. And before we say goodbye for the day, regarding applying for additional funding, do we have to apply during the normal application time frame, or can we do that at any time? I think speaking of additional funding.
Yeah, supplemental applications can be submitted at any time, and then it's up to the Special Highway Committee if they want to wait for the award period, the typical award period, to make a decision on the funding.
Great, thank you.
Yes, and thank you for having us. And yeah, please reach out if I can be of any assistance as well. And I'll get that material over to you so it can be shared.
Sounds great. And I see that Bev also put her email in the chat. So feel free to reach out to Bev or Natasha. We'll have the contacts for her as well on the website later with the support materials. So thank you again for your time. You're getting quite a few shout out thank yous as well on the chat if you're not be able to follow that, Natasha. But thank you so much for the expertise today. Thank you to CCI as well. And for all of you for attending. We love sharing learning and resource opportunities with you, and know that it takes a lot of time sometimes to pull away from other projects or meetings and whatnot you've got going on the day. So thank you for taking time to learn with us today as well. With that, we will send you off on your afternoon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.